Welcome to
Ping
Pong
Philosophy
with
Luca Incurvati.
Luca Incurvati is Associate Professor in the Department of Philosophy and in the Institute for Logic, Language and Computation at the University of Amsterdam. You can learn more about him and his work in the description down below.
So Luca, thank you very much for being here in Ping Pong Philosophy.
A pleasure.
I want to go right away with the questions, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
So Luca, what is a philosophical position or idea you'd wish it were true, but in your view, sadly, it's not?
Yeah, I think probably the thesis that every proposition is either provable or disprovable, which is known in the philosophical literature as Gödelian optimism. Mm-hmm. So Gödelian because, according to some at least, it's a position that the logician could get or endorse, and optimist because it's rather optimist as a position, but I would like to say is probably wishful thinking maybe. Mm-hmm. So it borders on that. I do not think that it's false, so I do not believe necessarily that it's false, but I think it probably is.
But since you wish it were true, what do you think it's a cool thing that would happen if it were true?
Yeah, one thing that it would be cool is that one would be able to hold on to both the idea that probability, that truth implies probability, which is something that, for instance, the intuitionists have believed, the anti-realists more generally, whilst holding on to classical logic. So it would be a way of having one's cake and eat it too, really. Oh. Plus, wouldn't it be lovely if we could find out about, every proposition that there is, and maybe as a methodological maxim, it still would retain its attraction, because maybe when, as mathematicians or logicians, we set out to prove something, it's nice to just, think that they will be able to do it.
All right. But I guess that you have held this for a long time, this view. But can you tell me, have you recently changed your mind?
Yeah, I think I used to be a very staunch defender of classical logic, so very, very much convinced that classical logic was right and held across the board, and is also and actually, that's one of the reasons that I got interested in bilateralism, because bilateralism, which is the idea that meaning is explained in terms of two speech acts, assertion and denial, provided a way of holding on to classical logic in the faces of some arguments that have been put forward by Michael Dummett. But actually, bilateralism that I then extended to multilateralism has led me to believe that there are areas in which classical logic doesn't hold in, strictly speaking. Yeah.
All right. And when you say that you changed your mind, was like forced by your own development? So in philosophy, you were developing something, and then that led you to change? It was more like a gradual thing and until one day you realized, okay, this classical logic cannot be correct across the board.
Well, I think it was rather gradual in the sense, at least I started looking at areas of applications of my system, of my approach, and then I saw that in certain areas the approach really required some changes to classical logic. The changes are actually not so dramatic, so in the end what you end up with is something that is known as supervaluationist logic or something akin to it, and according to some it's quite close to classical logic. So really my heart is still maybe in some sense still quite close to classical logic, but but it's still not fully classical.
And now that I think again, from what we talk, we can kind of a little bit predict what you're going to say next, but what is a philosophical position that you have cherished for a long time, which is not classical logic or something close to it? No,
it's, I would say, can I say something that maybe counts more as a metaphilosophical position, which would be pragmatism. Sometimes when it's presented as a first order, philosophical position according to which, truth is is somehow linked to utility, or that truth is what will be believed, or there will be a consensus on in the long run as per health. But really, pragmatism is a metaphilosophical attitude of giving priority to our thought, to our practices, our thoughts and talk in practice, and that's something that I've cherished and made mine for as long as I can remember.
All right, but so since pragmatism is normally reconstructed as a tales of the two Cambridges, right? And you are from one of those Cambridges. Do you think that had an influence on you?
Oh, definitely. I think, it's something that I realized only with the benefit of hindsight. So,
okay.
So initially, I didn't see that there was this influence by one of the two Cambridges, the British Cambridge, on me. But then, reflecting upon my intellectual development, I realized that there had been a big influence by people like Hugh Price, for instance, Tim Smiley, and Samuel Blackburn, all these Cambridge pragmatists, and maybe in general the environment, the atmosphere that was in Cambridge. Yeah.
So Luca, now we're gonna shift gears a little bit, and we're gonna talk about you as a philosophy educator. Which text do you think, and text in a broad sense, do you think all philosophy students should read?
Okay, about that, I would like to give a pragmatist answer.
Right, yeah, good.
Just following up on what we just said, and say that really is going to depend very much on the goals, particularly in a particular setting. But I was thinking that if you think that, for instance, one goal is to learn how to write formal philosophy, then I think a student can do a lot worse than looking at the Grundlagen, the arithmetic, because it's a masterpiece.
By Frege, right?
Yeah, by Gottlob Frege, because it's a masterpiece of how to write formal philosophy. It doesn't get bogged down into details, into the formalism, and yet the formalism is there.
So it's like this thing that they're not, by adding formalism, they're not complicating the presentation, or they're making it clearer even.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to praise, of course, about the Grundlagen. But now, for a more biased question, who's your favorite living philosopher?
Yeah. So if you'd asked this question in 2010, I would have said Michael Dummett, as you probably might have surmised from our previous interactions. But in 2025, I would say possibly two philosophers, if I may. Yeah. One on the philosophy of mathematics side, who's Penelope Maddy.
Of course.
And one on the more philosophical language / metaphysics side, and that's Amy Thomasson. And I think what they have in common is that I think they both share the sort of pragmatist leaning that I have, of paying attention to our practices, to what we actually do. And the other thing is that they just write beautifully, very elegantly, without, accessibly, and that's really wonderful. Yeah.
Here I have to say that I thank you personally for introducing me to Thomasson's work, because, now I could say that she's also one of my favorite philosophers, but it's only after you, you told me, go read her, she's great, and then I discovered her work. So I fully agree with that answer, even if it's very biased, but I agree with bias.
Well, that's what we're here for.
But now, what is an area outside philosophy that you think philosophers should engage with more?
So, of course, I could say, mathematics and linguistics, because those are two areas that I work on, but maybe wanted to give a more sort of original, if you will.
Franz Werth already said mathematics.
Maths. Philosophers should do more maths.
So that's taken as well. Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that. So I would say architecture.
Architecture. Wow.
I think there's very little engagement with architecture, even in aesthetics. There's been work on the philosophy of architecture and aesthetics, but not as much as you would expect. And yet there's art. There's mathematics involved, there's sociology. So, and this is, the interaction of all these dimensions makes it potentially very fruitful philosophically. I don't know whether I'm the right person to do it, but I think it's something that I would like to see more interactions.
Yes, I think now you say it, the only one I think has developed philosophy of architecture or engagement with architecture is postmodernist philosophy, which is Gilles Deleuze. So I've never even considered like architecture as one of the areas that we should try to engage with more. But yeah, it's curious that maybe from aesthetics, we have like some engagement with this area. So that's a great answer, Luca. Thank you for bringing this into our attention. So please go and do philosophy of architecture, philosophy of urbanism, perhaps something like that. But well, now for the last part of the interview, when I ask you a little bit about your opinions about the current philosophical landscape, academically speaking. So, as a lecturer, which country or institution you think has the best academic calendar? And I know that you can compare very little with other institutions, but you've had a very very good experience with the British and the Dutch one, at least.
Yeah, as well as the Italian one, which is where I studied originally. Yeah, I would say, because even within the British system, there are differences. I had a very positive experience with the Cambridge system, which is divided into 3 terms, which are very short, very intense. Maybe you might say too intense, but then that means that you have a lot of space left for research. Whereas, for instance, in the Netherlands, you tend to have very long semesters, and so the teaching is spread out across these very long semesters. And then if you want to have a period which is very free, which is free completely of teaching, then that makes it a bit difficult. And so that's what I had a very good experience with the Cambridge system.
Oh, good. A lot of fans of the British academic system in the podcast. Which country or institution organizes the best academic events, in your opinion? And with this, I mean, you can tell me if you really like going to this particular conference, or you think that there is a place that organizes great conference every time you go.
Okay. Yeah, this is a very difficult one, I think. Can I say about, what I would like to say is a place that I have very fond memories of any time I've been to events there, and this is Arche in St. Andrews.
Yes,
I know
of course.
you already had, I know, some people from Arche, so I don't know, I'm not going to say it as a bit of advertising, but just as the fact that both as a graduate student and as a member of staff, when I been there, I had wonderful experiences. And I was really impressed as a student by all the technology that they had in our care compared to the very kind of bare technology that we had in Cambridge, for instance.
At that time, right?
Yeah, at the time. So that was 2007, and they had things like boards that would allow you to change slides just by knocking with your hand. So that seemed very futuristic at the time. Yeah.
So Arche was starting at that point?
I think it had been going on for a bit, but it was still relatively recent, I think.
And Luca, this is a question I want to ask you because I TA for you, and I noticed that you include little of your own writing in the courses you teach. But when was the first time you felt, even a secondary reading, I'm going to include this text by me in the syllabus?
So you will have noticed that, in fact, I tend not to do that. And the first time I included that text of mine was just last semester. And that was during a course that I co-taught with my colleague Maria Aloni. And Maria talked me into including a text of mine that I wrote with Julian Schlöder on weak rejection. And I actually loved it because we have such bright students at the Master of Logic, and they gave terrific comments, if a bit scary, on the paper. Yeah.
All right. And since I have you here, I have to ask you this question, which is, what is the best argument you can give to a bilateralist to turn into a multilateralist?
Yeah, I would say that we need to take into account, in the spirit of inferentialism and pragmatism, we need to take into account the varieties of things that people do with language. And in order to account for those, we need to countenance further speech acts beyond assertion and rejection in our proof theory, and that also allows us to account for many more linguistic phenomena in addition to those that you can account from a bilateralist setting. So you can account for epistemic models, you can account for deontic models, and so on. So this is...
So the world is evolving. Please listen to the multilateralism side. Well, Luca, this brings it to a close. So thank you very much for being here in the podcast. Thank you also for providing a nice way to decorate our blackboard here.
Thank you for having me very much.
Next time we're gonna try to do the ping pong thing in ping pong philosophy with ping pong.
Multilateralist ping pong.
Multilateralist ping pong. But for now, I have to say goodbye. Thank you very much, and say goodbye to everyone.
Bye-bye.
at home.
Hello there, I'm Pablo. I'm the host of Ping Pong Philosophy. Thank you for watching or listening until the end. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Remember that you can like and subscribe to keep updated with everything we do here. Until next time.